What's up? Welcome to Backend Stuff. I'm Jacob Blitzo. Today we are going to identify some patterns in our test files that would benefit from shared code. Using case templates can be very helpful when you find yourself writing the same stuff over and over again. Let's go ahead and open our project Reusable API. If you haven't been following along with this project, you can find the GitHub link in the description below. And then let's go ahead and expand the lib directory, the test directory, the Reusable API directory, and then since we only have the schema directory, that's already expanded. And then let's open up our account test.exs file. So what I always hate doing is writing test data like this valid params map here. In our first changeset test, what if we could write a reusable function that could take our expected fields with types list that we made at the top of both our account and user schema test files and return generated data based off that list with dynamic realistic values that change and aren't hard-coded values. One way to generate realistic test data is to use a library like Faker. Faker's sole purpose is to provide realistic data for our tests. Let's open up our mix.exs file and let's add Faker. So if we find our dependencies here, and let's just go ahead and put it after bcrypt. So throw a comma in and then opening curly brace and then colon Faker, comma, quotation mark, all right, tilde, and then the greater than. And the current version that we're going to use is 0.17. And then close those quotation marks. When we add only colon and then the atom test here after the version, it will only be added to our test environment because we don't want to use this in our dev or production code. So this is important. This will ensure that it compiles when we run our tests. All right, so save that. Okay, and now let's open up our terminal and cd into our project here. So cd mines and documents, develop BS, and then Reusable API. And then we can just run mix space deps period git to install our new dependency. All right, now we are ready to create some fake data. Let's create a case template now so we can use our new dependency. Down in our test directory, let's make a new folder and we're going to call this one support. And then inside our support folder, let's make a new file and we will call this schema_case.ex. And then let's just create our module here, def module. And this is going to be called Reusable API support schema case. Schema case. Okay, and then we want to use xunit.caseTemplate, and then we're going to use the using macro, which is just using do, and we're going to do a quote block here. And what this will do is you could either pass in an optional argument for setup, but in our case, we're just going to have it inject our alias ecto changeset, and then our import schema case, which is this file. So we're going to do an alias here, and we're going to have an alias for our ecto changeset, and then we're going to import Reusable API support.schema case. So we're injecting both of these, and so anytime that we use this template, this should not say user, it should say use. Anytime we use this template, it will automatically include this alias and this import. So it'll give us access to all the public functions inside this module. All right, so let's write a function now, and it has to be a public function. So def space, and then we're going to say valid underscore params. And then we want to pass in our expected values with types list. So we'll call this parameter fields with types, and then do a do and end to close that off. Since our argument passed in is a list of tuples, let's use maybe a for loop, and we can grab the field and its type so we know what value we should have Faker generate us. So let's go ahead and do for, and then we want a pattern match to the tuple, which our first value is field and our second value is type. Close those curly braces, and then we want to push in our values from our fields with type list as we loop through. So fields with types, and then we're going to push this into a empty map. So we're starting with an empty map, but then it's going to have our map of generated data. So do a do and an end. All right, so we need to return a map that's identical to our valid parameters map. Then that's a string keyed map. So we want to basically return our field as a string, but it's currently an atom. So we have to do atom.to_string and then pass in our field. And then our second value needs to be our type, but we need to generate a value now with our type. One good way we could do this is we could create a key valued map with anonymous functions to help us out here. So above our for loop in the same function, we can create a map called valid_value by _type equals, and then we're just making a map here. All right, so a couple types here, and we're gonna grab our types from our type, which is an atom. So when we call right here, we're going to do valid value by type, and then it's going to we're going to pass in the key that we want the value of. So our key here is just our type value. Types that we have, well, our ID is a binary ID. So if our type is a binary ID, the function we want to call here is going to be dash greater than. And now to use fake, we just call faker dot, and then it has some awesome built-in functions. So we can just create a UUID. So UUID, and then we're going to just do the v4, and that will create our binary, a string value ID. And then we need to end this anonymous function. All right, and then comma. Now another value we have are strings, right? So string, and then let's do another anonymous function here. And now we can do faker.lorem.word. And there's a ton of options here, but this will generate a word for us. And that's enough for us for our string values. And then do end, comma, and then we have naive datetime. So naive underscore datetime. And then that function will be faker dot naive datetime. And we need to we'll go backwards. And so we'll just have it generate a date in the past. And since we want this data to be random, we're just going to use enum.random. And we'll do anything from 0 days to 100 days in the past, okay? And down here, we're already calling our map with the type key. So with the key value pair here. Oh, and I can't have a colon there. We need a dash greater than for the anonymous function. And then with anonymous functions, we always just have to remember to call them with a dot and then opening and closing parentheses. And then we can save this. Okay, so we're almost ready to test. We want to make sure that our .ex file is available and compiled when we run our tests. So let's just go to our mix.exs file. And we want to make sure that this right here, this function, Elixir path, we actually have the test to the support directory. And if you've been following along, this should already be here because when we generated our project with Phoenix, it created that support directory. And so anytime our environment is test, it compiles not only the lib directory, it also compiles our test.support. So that's where we're putting all of our extra support and helper functions that are .ex files so they get compiled. And that is called right here in Elixir C paths. And we call the function and pass in the current environment. And that is how that works. Okay, so now we can go to our account test.exs file and we can delete this nasty map here. So let's get rid of this. All right. And now we can use our new schema case template. And one thing we can do is we can delete changeset and xunit case, which is pretty cool. I love getting rid of stuff. And now we just can use realdealapi.support.schema-case. Okay, and now let's go down to our change set. And when I saved it, it messed up the format, and we want our change set down here. And we have our valid parameters where I deleted the map afterwards. And now all we have to do is call our valid params function, and we're going to pass in our expected fields with type map, which is right at the top here. So we're passing in our key values and then their types, okay? So that is pretty cool, right? Now we can use this essentially anywhere we need valid parameters, even in our user schema tests or any schemas we create in the future. So let's save this and let's pull up our terminal and run our tests. Mix test. Test.support unexpected token. Line 16 is missing a terminator. It helps to put an end there. Okay. Let's go back to our tests and then we will pull up our terminal again and do a mix test. All right, so we have a couple failures here. If we read through this, we don't have valid arguments. We got a false back. And let's see, our left code is looking for a true valid change set, and the actual is false. And it looks like it was our email, because we are just passing in a word, right? And we validate that there's an @ symbol and no spaces. So we have to make a special case in our generator for our email. So let's go ahead and fix our email right now. So we go back to our schema case, and so email is a string. So we have to adjust this code because we don't want to manipulate all strings to be emails, right? So one thing that we can do is we can just look specifically. So we can use like a case statement inside this for loop, and we can just look specifically for our email field. And so then this would allow us to also add any other fields in the future that might need special attention. So if we just do this case, we want to have a case statement with our field. And if our field is an email, we will return a special tuple. So we're going to say Adam to string and pass in our field. And then we want to create an email address to return here. So we're going to do faker dot, I believe it's internet. Yeah, internet dot email. All right. And then for everything else, we still want it to go through our map up here and pattern match to the proper key. So we can just do an underscore dash greater than, and then let's cut this and then call our old code here. And then let's save it and run our tests again. Okay, we got another error. What is going on here? All right, so if we look at our values do not match. Our expected value is, it is a naive date stamp, but look at that. It is going into like the microseconds instead of just to the second. So changeset is creating a timestamp just to the second, and then faker is creating a timestamp into the milliseconds and further. So this is easy to fix because all we have to do is truncate our value that we're getting back from faker just to seconds, and then we should be good to go. So if we go in just before the end and after our enum random, let's just, you know what? I'm going to return this down so it's easier to read. And then we'll put the end here. And then all we're going to do is do a pipe operator. Naive datetime has a built-in function called truncate, and you can pass in the value you want to truncate it to. So we're going to do colon and then truncate to second. And now when we save it and run our tests again, everything should be passing. And there we go. We have 5 passing tests. There we have it. So not only did we learn how to create a case template to share reusable code, we also created a helper function that automatically creates valid parameters for us to use in any test. All we have to do is update our expected fields with type map, and the rest of our code takes care of it. My challenge for you is to create another helper function for creating invalid parameters for our other changeset test in our account test file, and then head over to our user test file and implement the new schema case template. As always, if you need help or want to check out the solutions, check out that GitHub link in the description below. And if you have more questions or just want to hang out and chat, join my Discord server, Backend Stuff. That link is in the description as well. If you want to learn how to build scalable, production-ready APIs, hit that subscribe button now. See you next time.